The testimonies featured on this channel are presented as received, reflecting the personal experience and perspectives of the individuals who have generously shared them with us. We encourage our viewers to approach these testimonies with compassion and understanding, as these are personal testimonies of people involved. We also encourage you to always refer to the Holy Bible and the teachings of Jesus Christ and His apostles for guidance. There are moments in life when everything changes in an instant, moments when what we believe to be true suddenly feels like a lie. This is the story of Aisha, an Italian woman who became a Muslim. She thought she had found the right path, the truth. She gave up everything, her past, her family's faith, and even her own doubts, so she could follow Islam without question. But one day, she read a verse in Quran that made her stop and think. It made her question everything. And that night, she had an experience that shook her to the core. She came face to face with something terrifying, something that made her see Islam in a way she never had before. What did she see? What did she feel? And what did she discover after that? Let's hear from Aisha.
If someone had told me years ago that I would ever question Islam, I wouldn't have believed them. I loved Islam. I followed it with all my heart. I believed it was the one true religion, the only way to live. I wasn't born Muslim. I grew up in Italy in a Catholic family. But when I was a teenager, I met a man who was Muslim. He was kind and patient. He never forced me, but he always spoke about Islam with love and passion. At first, I wasn't interested. I had my own beliefs, my own way of life. But over time, I started to listen. I read books, watched videos, and even spoke to other Muslims. They all said the same thing: Islam is peace, Islam is the truth, Islam is the final message from God. The more I learned, the more I felt drawn to it. I started to believe that maybe I had been wrong about my old faith. Maybe this was the real path to God. One day, I decided to become Muslim. I said the Shahada, the declaration of faith, and from that moment on, I was part of a new world. At first, everything felt perfect. I wore the hijab, I prayed 5 times a day, I fasted during Ramadan. I even cut ties with some old friends who didn't support my decision. But deep inside, something always felt off. I ignored it. I told myself it was just the devil trying to make me doubt. Every time I had questions, I pushed them away. Until one night, when everything changed. That day, I was reading the Quran as usual. Then I came across a verse I had never really noticed before. Surah At-Tawbah 9:111. Indeed, Allah has purchased from the believers their lives and their properties, in exchange for that they will have paradise. They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. I read it again. And again. My hands started to shake. I felt sick to my stomach. I had read many verses before, even ones about war and punishment. But this one felt different. It was like a contract: give your life, take a life, and you get paradise. I couldn't stop thinking about it. If Islam was about peace, why did this verse sound like a trade of blood for heaven? That night, I went to bed feeling uneasy. My mind was racing. I wanted to believe I had misunderstood the verse. But deep inside, I knew something was wrong. Then I had the most terrifying experience of my life. I don't know if it was a dream or something else, but it felt too real to ignore. I found myself standing in a dark place. There were no walls, no floor, just empty space. The air was heavy, and I felt something watching me. Then I heard whispers. At first, they were soft, like someone calling my name from far away. But slowly, they grew louder. It wasn't just one voice. It was many, all speaking at the same time, in a language I didn't understand. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't listen. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then, out of the darkness, figures appeared. At first, they looked like people. But as they came closer, I saw their faces. Their eyes were empty, their mouths open as if they were screaming, but no sound came. Their skin looked burned, their hands reaching for me. Fear gripped my heart. I felt cold, but I was sweating. Then, in the middle of them, I saw a man. Unlike the others, he looked calm. He wore a long robe and stood still, watching me. His face was pale, and his eyes were black, so dark that I couldn't see anything inside them. He smiled. "You see now," he said. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "This isn't real." His smile didn't fade. "But it is," he said. "And you already know the truth." Suddenly, I felt a strong pain in my chest, as if something was being ripped from inside me. I fell to my knees, gasping for air. The whispers turned into screams. "You were warned," they shouted. "You were warned." I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I wanted to wake up, but I was trapped. The man took a step forward, his black eyes staring into mine. "You made a choice," he said. "Now, you must see what it really means." And then, I woke up. I sat up in my bed, breathing hard, my clothes soaked in sweat. My heart was pounding so fast I thought I was dying. I looked around. My room was the same. The light from the street shone through my window. Everything was normal. But I knew something had changed. I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see. And I could never look at Islam the same way again. I sat in my bed, shaking. My hands were cold, my body drenched in sweat. I wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, but it didn't feel like one. It felt real. Too real. I turned on the light, my eyes scanning the room. Everything looked normal. The same walls, the same furniture. But I felt different. I reached for my Quran. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. My eyes landed on the verse again. Indeed, Allah has purchased from the believers their lives and their properties, in exchange for that they will have paradise. They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. The words burned in my mind. I tried to push the fear away, telling myself I had misunderstood. But the voices from my nightmare still echoed in my head. "You were warned." I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. For the next few days, I felt like I was in a fog. Everything felt different. When I prayed, I couldn't focus. When I read the Quran, I felt uneasy. When I looked at my Muslim friends, I felt like a stranger among them. And the fear wouldn't leave me. One night, I decided to do something I had never done before. I went online and searched for ex-Muslims. I hesitated before clicking on any link. I had always been told that leaving Islam was the worst sin, the ultimate betrayal. I had heard stories of people who left and were shunned, hated, even killed. But I needed answers. I found a forum where former Muslims shared their stories. As I read, my heart pounded. They had doubts. Just like me. They saw things that didn't make sense. Just like me. They had been afraid. Just like me. One post caught my eye. A woman had written. At first, I ignored my doubts. But when I finally had the courage to ask questions, everything fell apart. The more I searched, the more I realized I had been lied to. Lied to? I felt a chill run through me. I kept reading. More people shared verses that had made them question Islam. Some were about violence. Others were about women. Others were about punishment. One verse made my stomach turn. Surah An-Nisa 4:34. Men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, and when they disobey, admonish them, refuse to share their beds, and, lastly, strike them. Strike them? I read the verse again. And again. My hands shook. I had always been told that Islam honored women. But here, it was clear, if a wife disobeyed, her husband could hit her. I felt sick. I closed my laptop and pressed my hands to my face. What was happening? For years, I had trusted Islam. I had given up everything for it. But now, I felt like I had been tricked. And then, the nightmares started again. Every night, I found myself back in that dark place. The whispers grew louder. The figures came closer. The man with black eyes smiled at me. "You see now," he would say. And every time, I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing. I knew I couldn't ignore this anymore. I had to know the truth. So, I decided to do something dangerous. I started asking questions. At first, I was careful. I asked my Muslim friends small things that wouldn't make them suspicious. But when I asked about the verse on fighting and killing, their faces changed. "Why are you asking this?" one of them said, frowning. "I just want to understand," I said. "There's nothing to understand," another friend said. "This is Allah's command. Who are we to question it?" The way they looked at me sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't ask again. But I kept searching. One day, I found a video of a former Islamic scholar. He had spent years studying Islam before leaving it. I watched as he spoke about things I had never heard before. He talked about the history of the Quran, how it was compiled, how many changes had been made to it over time. He talked about Muhammad's life, things I had never been told in the mosque. He talked about women, about war, about punishments. The more I listened, the more I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. Had I been following something I didn't truly understand? Then, he said something that made my blood run cold. Many people don't leave Islam because they are convinced it is true. They stay because they are afraid of what will happen if they leave. Fear. That was what had kept me silent. That was what had kept me from asking questions. But I couldn't live in fear anymore. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to ignore my doubts anymore. I was going to face the truth, no matter what it was. Little did I know, my journey was about to get even more dangerous. The night I decided to search for the truth, I felt like I had crossed a line I could never go back from. I couldn't stop thinking about everything I had read. The verses, the stories, the things I had never been told before. It felt like I had been blind for years, and now, suddenly, I could see. But what I saw terrified me. I knew that if I told anyone, they would never look at me the same way again. So I stayed quiet. But something inside me had changed. I couldn't pray the same way anymore. Every time I stood on the prayer mat, I felt like a stranger. I couldn't open the Quran without feeling uneasy. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine. The fear that had followed me since that first nightmare never left. And then, things got worse. One evening, I was sitting alone in my room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a sound behind me. A whisper. I turned quickly, my heart pounding. But there was nothing there. I told myself it was my imagination. Maybe I was just tired. But then, the lights flickered. My chest tightened. I stared at the lamp, waiting, listening. Then, the whisper came again. It was soft, but clear. "You were warned." My breath caught in my throat. I jumped from my chair and ran out of my room. My hands were shaking as I stood in the hallway, my heart racing. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to push it out of my mind. Maybe it was just my fear playing tricks on me. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But deep inside, I knew that wasn't true. Something was happening to me. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to talk to someone. I remembered a woman I had found online, an ex-Muslim from my country. She had left Islam years ago and now helped others who had doubts. I sent her a message. She replied quickly. "I understand what you're going through," she wrote. "I've been there too. You're not alone." Her words brought tears to my eyes. We talked for hours. She told me how she had once been a devoted Muslim, just like me. How she had ignored her doubts for years, afraid of what would happen if she questioned anything. But one day, she said, she couldn't ignore them anymore. She started researching, just like I had. And what she found changed everything. Leaving Islam is terrifying, she told me. Not because it's true, but because they make you afraid to leave. That sentence hit me hard. Fear. It was always fear. I wasn't afraid that Islam was true. I was afraid of what would happen to me if I left. I sat in silence, staring at my screen. She sent another message. "You don't have to decide anything right now. But you deserve to know the truth. Keep searching. And whatever happens, remember, you are not alone." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't alone. That night, I didn't have nightmares. For the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to live in fear anymore. I was going to keep searching, keep learning. And no matter what I found, I was going to face it with open eyes. My journey wasn't over. But for the first time, I felt like I was finally walking toward the truth. No more fear. No more silence. Just the truth. And that changed everything.